The time is just gone 8:42 a.m. as we continue this morning, and we are now looking at our weekly edition of Crime Talk with eThekwini Secure. But we are going to be focusing on local politics. The chairperson of eThekwini Secure, Imtiaz, Syed, on the line. Imtiaz, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, United.
Yes, Jazakallah for your time. Now, Imtiaz, last night I had a program looking at minority parties and their
Mm-hmm.
response to the State of the Nation address. I had people like Ahmad Manzoor, Imam as well, and I had
Yep.
somebody from the ATM. And earlier on, I was talking to Hanif Hendricks. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Hanif Hendricks, I recall in the build up to the SONA, spoke about a minority bloc and a minority bloc getting together in the form of coalition politics and then lending support to the major parties. And the point that the NFP had made in last night's broadcast, and I asked their views because in all likelihood we are going to be heading towards some sort of coalition government on a national level, and you've got
Correct.
all the experience at a local level, and so this has
Mm-hmm.
become a major talking point. And the NFP was of the opinion that we don't have to align ourselves to a particular party, especially when it comes to issues where one cannot compromise on as well. And I just like your thoughts because I know a lot has been playing out in your part of the world.
Correct. United, when it comes down to it, I mean, firstly, let's be very clear. This issue of coalitions is something that's very new. It's currently only in local government, and that's where it really is, right? And obviously, moving forward, there's quite a big hoo-ha about how does all of this work and what's the way forward. Now, what we need to remember about the space we're currently in is that there is no climate of authority in saying that this is how it should work and this is how we should be moving forward. The problem we currently have, and I'll be very, very robust in this understanding, is that when we speak at local government at all levels, every municipality, we've got deployed members of national parties. And that's a great cause for concern because those members really have no decision making powers. Yes, they can make submissions and say whatever they want to say, but ultimately, at the end of the day, they've got to speak to their national or provincial authority to get a decision as to what goes on. Now, is that in the interest of the citizens that live within that municipality in terms of what goes on? Absolutely not. I mean, you've seen I think it was on 31st, where we put in a motion of no confidence against the mayor. And a week before, just a week before, the EFF were calling for exactly the same thing that we tabled, which was a motion. And ultimately, they come out to say, and this is really something that you need to consider and think about, is that they say it's because they were not consulted, really. This is something that you asked for. We are a small party that tabled it for you, and you don't support the motion based on the fact that you were not consulted. Now, where did that come from? Who took those decisions? I can tell you right now, the members within this local council had no idea until it came time for them to actually vote. Now, if national politics and provincial politics plays out in local government, I can guarantee you that we will never ever get service delivery. Now, why are we so vociferous in this issue? Remember, I'm the leader of my party and I sit in local government. Every other party that has one seat or whatever it is in council are deployed members of a national party. And they ultimately listen to their leadership, which is wherever they might be sitting, to say this is what you do in eThekwini. And what we find is majority of the small parties banter to the majority party anyway, without standing with fortitude in the rights of their constituency, without them saying, you know what, we are here to serve our people, this is what we need to do. And ultimately, change is change. We asked the question, is the mayor the person that we want to lead the city? That question has been answered. The EFF answered it for them. They allowed the mayor to be here. That's fine. We have absolutely no issue with that. But how do we move forward? Because all of the minority parties had now thrown in their towels with the ANC. So they got to listen to whatever the ANC says. They have no freedom of expression. They have no freedom of democracy. They can't say what they want to say. They can't come up and speak about things that are going wrong and all of that in the city. And there's very few parties that are actually able to do that right now. And we're one of them. And we're very proud of that, actually.
Yes, but also what is important to understand, Imtiaz, is these parties are being judged by, or even if it's in a form of a coalition, they are going to be
Mm,
judged by their performance. and how efficient they are in delivering services. And this is where the problem actually comes in, because on the one hand, many of them are actually tied to their party. They owe their allegiance. They are loyal to their party, and at the same time, when one looks at service delivery, which is absolutely, it's in a state of total collapse at this point in time. And as minority parties, I mean, your focus, because you owe it to your constituency, you
Correct.
owe it to your voters that listen, I am here to represent you. I will deliver this, that type of thing. But again, your hands are tied. You can do absolutely nothing.
Correct. You see, the bureaucracy in all of it speaks to exactly what you're saying right now. Ultimately, when it comes down to it, every single party is saying party first, then the people. That lies our problem. In that lies everything that is wrong with our municipalities. Because if we are political parties within the city, it does not mean that what happens in eThekwini is exactly the same footprint should happen in Johannesburg and in Cape Town and in Tugela and in Howick. The dynamics of eThekwini are very different. The people that live within eThekwini have their own needs, and it's left to politicians who are, in fact, elected members of this community to represent them. Now, when we start representing our party's agendas, we then lose focus of our people, and therefore we never get anything done because our ultimate focus is in political grandstanding. It's in whether they get to jump in BMWs and ride around in blue lights, whether they get to be chairpersons and all of that. You don't need to be a chairperson of nothing to get service delivery in the city. You just need to know what you need to do and get things done for the people. And if it means taking to the streets, getting your ratepayers involved, getting everyone involved, and giving them access through you, then so be it. But it should be the people first. Currently, the entire system of politics is about the parties and how they're going to get along in 2024 and 2026. And ultimately, and I can guarantee you this, if politicians start serving their people, they will not need to canvass because by them serving the people is canvassing on its own. So do your job. And if by doing your job you get it right, then the people will support you. And that's what it is. And that's what it comes down to ultimately.
Yes, but also, just whether you are serving on a national level or at a local level, one of the points that came out in my discussion last night with the NFP was
Yes.
looking ahead at coalition politics is an inclusive government. And
Yes.
this is where it is whether you are a party that has got 50 seats or your party that has got 1 seat or 2 or 3 seats. It's about inclusive government, and it's about getting the best person to do the job, or in whatever portfolio that person is appointed. And this is something that coalition governments, even at local government, need to consider very, very seriously. It is not about the party, it is about the best person for the job, irrespective of which party that person comes from.
No, absolutely. And when it comes down to it, when we speak to it all the time, we went in local government because we're quite clear that this is where ultimate service delivery is to the people at grassroots level. You get your water, your sanitation, your electricity, all of that from local government. And if we as a country cannot get local government right, then in fact, why are we even talking about the bigger things? I mean, there's great debate as to whether we're going to be running for provincial elections and national elections and all of those things. Yes, that's something that's on the cards and we might play that game. But ultimately, at the end of the day, our main criteria and focus is to make sure that we deliver services in local government. And that ultimately is where every single councillor that sits in local government needs to understand their role. They are here to serve the people, not their party, not what their party desires. And if they start pushing that agenda, then we can bring change ultimately. But right now, in the climate we're in, we're going nowhere quickly. And ultimately, the leading party has this arrogance about them to say that if we allowed you an opportunity to vote for us or vote with us, then in fact you need to toe our line. Absolutely incorrect. That dynamic of thinking needs to absolutely change. Ultimately, if small parties, and I'm saying that it is something that can happen, right? Where small parties get together, they form their little block, and they go to the leading party, which is the ANC at the moment, and they do a deal. Fine, no problem. But tell us what is it in your benefit and your constituency's benefit that you are getting in return to service them? Is it priority service? And this was one of the reasons we had a fallout with the ANC. We originally had an agreement with them to expedite service delivery on any matters that we raise. And ultimately, once they got the vote and once they were in power, they ultimately ignore everybody. Why do we behave that way? These are coalitions, and these things need to be handled with kid gloves. We need to walk around eggshells when it comes to these things, because let me tell you, politicians are very emotional. Yet they say, let us leave emotion at the door. With all due respect, they get emotional about everything. Ultimately, we need to be emotional about the state of our city, what we're doing, and how we're moving forward.
Imtiaz, I'm going to put you on hold. I just want to engage with you for a few minutes. If you will bear with us, I'm going to play out one or two ads. We'll be back.
Okay.
Listen to Salam Media.
After 11 years, Syria remained the world's largest refugee crisis.
We didn't flee from Assad just to come and die here.
More than 6.8 million Syrians have been forced to flee their country since 2011.
All of my country destroyed now, and I fear about my children.
And another 6.9 million remain internally displaced.
Our condition is very bad. We have no proper tents, nor a proper living. I have 10 children and we do not get any aid.
The vast majority, approximately 5.2 million refugees, have found refuge in neighboring countries such as Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan. Penny Appeal South Africa has been distributing hot meals and food parcels to food insecure families and provided mobile housing to those in need. Your donation, no matter how small, can make a big difference. Visit our website www.pennyappeal.org.za or call us on 031 110 0573. Penny Appeal South Africa. Small change, big difference.
Discover the Africa of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042-203-1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
Kids these days are smart, and when you're competing for their attention against their smartphones, you need to make smart choices, like using Sunfoil triple refined pure sunflower oil in every meal you make. It's naturally cholesterol-free and approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a balanced eating plan. So whether you're cooking, frying, or baking, you get the great tasting results that'll get their attention faster than the latest app. And if that doesn't work, change the Wi-Fi password. Sunfoil. Now we're cooking.
For a long time, we've lived in a centralized world where institutions held the all-important data and confirmed all transactions. Those times are over. Welcome to Libertas Group, a blockchain development company boasting an ecosystem that continually redefines the way we do business. Our blockchain is decentralized, making it immune to hacking or alteration, putting the power back in your hands with no middleman so you can focus on the growth of your business. Libertas, the simplest investment choice you'll make.
Rejuvenating media day by day. This is Salam Media.
Well, we continue with the broadcast this morning with Imtiaz Syed, Chairperson of eThekwini Secure, and our focus is on local government. We have been talking about coalitions and also at the same time how all of this is actually playing out and how this affects people like yourself and myself as ratepayers in the areas that we live in. Imtiaz, just the one issue now, we know that everything around us seems to be collapsing. Infrastructure is collapsing and services generally have, I mean, people, we find areas now where your grass is not cut, the potholes is always an issue, the filth, refuse removal, all of that is becoming a problem. And these are issues that people are now living with on a day to day basis, to the extent that for many of us, this has actually become a norm to live in this whole abnormal setup that we see around us. And the key issue here, and this is what local government is not thinking about, is what sort of infrastructure interventions are necessary so that we can improve, and also the need at local government level for infrastructure intervention, so that at the end of the day it doesn't affect us to the extent it's impacting on us on a socio-economic level.
Inayat, when we get into the issue of infrastructure, we need to clearly understand that really there was no planning since 1994 as to exactly what are we going to be replacing in terms of water lines, sanitation lines, sewage, lighting infrastructure, and all of these different things. And ultimately, the collapse of all of these things collectively over a period of many years has now led us into the situation where we got to revitalize everything across the board. Now, the question arises is, do we have the funds? Do we have the money? What are we talking to? Remember, and I'll speak to this quite openly, is that 73% of the operational expenditure of our city in eThekwini comes from the ratepayer. How then do we have 595 informal settlements that get services for free daily, which is CSW and water, which is a basic human right? And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be giving services to people for free based on the fact of socioeconomic issues or whatever it is that we want to cite. But how can it come at the cost of a ratepayer? Because ultimately, if we continue with this trajectory of urbanization without really taking in an understanding to say that if we don't make land available for people, if we don't make transport free for people to go to work and develop themselves, we would end up in cities that would become ultimately unlivable based on the high rate of cost. And that currently is the climate by which we're going. And we're at the precipice of it. Ultimately, right now, in the current time, we're at the precipice of it, because currently you'd see that many middle income earners cannot afford to even pay their electricity. What are we speaking to? They can't afford to pay their rates. Everybody's in areas. What are we doing, and how do we move forward from there? Now, if we really look at the problem, and if we try and find solutions to it, they can be. But there needs to be collective political will and collective political planning around what it is a city needs. And like I'm saying, if national and provincial government continue pulling puppet strings in municipalities and give us instability all the time. I mean, right now, the ANC has announced yesterday that they are changing the committees. Everyone that was chairing those committees for the past year would now be moved about and changed around and all of that. And currently, the Human Settlements and Infrastructure Committee is being given to the EFF, who have never been in that portfolio, right? It was under PG Mavulla previously. And I don't think we should be speaking around the issue of anyone being disgruntled about the issue. But the problem is, how then do you go and divide human settlements and infrastructure, leave eThekwini Transport Authority with human settlements, but then you move water, electricity, and DSW into economic development? How is that now economic development? That is supposed to be your standard trading services. These are services that you are supposed to have been given sustainably. If we're moving it into economic development, we're moving an entire budget into that committee under the control of someone else. And this is what's been playing out forever. I mean, what we see in local government is not actually what's happening, and that's the reality on the floor. Currently, we have ETA, which is being given to the EFF under Human Settlements and Infrastructure Committee, but ultimately we've been battling for many years to launch this whole people mover issue with this buses and all of that. And there's currently major contentions in terms of the taxi industry saying that they will not allow it. But when you come to a deadlock in these sorts of arrangements and agreements, you currently move away and shy away from blame. And ultimately, there's a party that's being set up to take that blame, and it's not going to be the ANC. And that's currently what's playing out at the moment. But here's the thing. If the taxi industry really cared about their people, they'd realize that putting in proper transport infrastructure for those that live beyond the poverty line or under the poverty line would make major sense in terms of building our socioeconomic issues or building on our socioeconomic issues. Now, when you take all of these things and you try and put them together, I guarantee you, it's like making a big pot of broth where you don't know where you're starting and what you've put in there and how to fix anything. At the end of the day, we need to compartmentalize our issues, start dealing with things in their proper systems. If we're having water infrastructure issues, we need to come up with a one plan as to when do we fix it, how do we fix it. And the last thing that should come to the mind of any person sitting in politics or officials is that let us raise this cost with the ratepayer, because burdening the ratepayer does not fix your problem. It ultimately would mean that you're transferring budget to people that cannot afford to pay it, and you're going to end up with areas in those books. Ultimately, that's the thing, and those are the things that are affecting us currently in local government.
Well, Jazakallah for that, Imtiaz, and we hope that that broth ends up being a flavor bomb right at the end. But Jazakallah, Jazakallah as always for your time. We wish you well. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Imtiaz Syed was our chairperson of eThekwini Secure. We're heading for the news. We'll be back.